Picture this. A man stands in the Arabian desert 1400 years ago. No internet, no satellites, no global news networks. Yet he makes specific predictions about the future that seem impossible for his time. He speaks of massive wars between people of the same faith, buildings so tall they touch the clouds, time moving so fast people can't catch their breath, people becoming so depressed they wish they were dead. Today, every single one of these prophecies is unfolding before our eyes. The man was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And the prophecies? They were signs of the day of judgment. But here's what will shock you. We're not just reading about these signs anymore. We're living through them. The question isn't whether these signs will come. The question is, how many are already here? Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you're about to discover will change how you see the world around you forever. Before we dive deep, let's get one thing clear. In Islamic teachings, there are two categories of signs before the Day of Judgment. First are the minor signs. These have been appearing throughout history. Things like widespread disobedience, moral decay, and natural disasters. Most scholars agree many minor signs have already occurred. But then come the major signs. These are different. These are the big, unmistakable indicators that the end times are near. The events so significant that when they happen, there's no going back. Traditional Islamic scholarship mentions 10 major signs. Some are clearly future events, but others, they might already be unfolding around us right now. Today, we're examining all 10 major signs. We'll explore which ones may have already begun, which ones are happening as we speak, and which ones are still to come. By the end of this video, you'll have a completely new perspective on current world events. You'll start seeing patterns that most people miss, and you'll understand why so many Islamic scholars believe we might be living in the most significant period in human history. So buckle up. Let's explore these ancient prophecies and their modern reality. Sign 1. Great wars between people of the same faith. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made a chilling prediction. He said the hour will not come until two massive groups fight each other. There will be enormous casualties on both sides, and here's the key detail. They will follow the same religious doctrine. When this prophecy was made, warfare was simple. Tribes fighting tribes, small armies with swords and spears. The idea of global conflict involving millions of people seemed impossible. Fast forward to the 20th century. World War I erupts in 1914. For the first time in history, entire continents are at war. The death toll? Over 17 million people. But this was just the beginning. Then comes World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history. Over 85 million people killed. The war spans multiple continents. Nearly every major nation on Earth gets involved. But here's where the prophecy becomes crystal clear. Look at the main powers involved. Germany, Italy, Britain, France, Austria, the United States, and the Soviet Union. What did most of these nations have in common? They were predominantly Christian. The war divided these Christian nations into two massive groups, the Allies on one side, the Axis powers on the other. Both sides claimed God was with them. Both sides had the same fundamental religious foundation, yet they slaughtered each other on an unprecedented scale. The destruction was beyond anything the world had ever seen. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed over 200,000 civilians in seconds. Technology had turned warfare into mass annihilation. This wasn't just any war. This was exactly what the prophecy described. Two huge groups. Same religious doctrine. Massive casualties. And it shaped the world order we still live in today. Some scholars argue this prophecy could also apply to other conflicts. The Iran-Iraq War saw two Muslim nations destroy each other for 8 brutal years. Sectarian violence continues to tear apart communities that share the same basic faith. The pattern is clear. When people of the same religion turn against each other, the destruction is always catastrophic, because they know each other's weaknesses. They share the same tactics, and the hatred runs deeper than any foreign enemy. Sign 2. The appearance of false prophets. Here's another prophecy that sends chills down your spine. The prophet said about 30 false claimants will appear before the day of judgment. Each one will claim to be a messenger of Allah. Remember, Islam teaches that Muhammad was the final prophet, the seal of prophethood. No true prophet would come after him. So anyone making such claims would be, by definition, a liar. But think about this from a historical perspective. For most of human history, claiming prophethood was social suicide. You'd be laughed at, imprisoned, or killed. The idea of 30 people making such claims seemed absurd. Yet look at what's happened, especially in recent centuries. In the 1800s, Baha'u'llah in Iran claimed to receive divine revelation. He founded the Baha'i faith, which now has millions of followers worldwide. His movement spread across continents and established temples in major cities. Around the same time, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in India claimed to be both a prophet and the Messiah. He founded the Ahmadiyya movement, which gained significant followers despite intense opposition from mainstream Muslims. In America, Joseph Smith claimed to receive divine revelations and founded the Mormon Church. His movement grew from a handful of believers to millions of members worldwide. The Reverend Sun Myung Moon in Korea claimed to be the second coming of Christ. His Unification Church gained followers across multiple countries and accumulated vast wealth. L. Ron Hubbard founded Scientology, claiming to have special knowledge about human existence and spiritual advancement. His movement became one of the most controversial religious organizations in the world. These are just a few examples. Throughout recent history, dozens of individuals have claimed divine revelation, special spiritual status, or prophetic missions. Some gained massive followings. Others were exposed as frauds. But the pattern is undeniable. What makes this even more significant is how these false claimants have used modern technology, television, radio, internet, and social media to spread their messages. They reach millions instantly, something impossible in earlier eras. But the prophecy mentions something even more terrifying. The ultimate false claimant, known as the Dajjal or Antichrist, will appear near the very end. His deception will be so powerful that only the most faithful will resist. These earlier false prophets, they might be preparing the ground, getting people accustomed to the idea of new revelations, making the ultimate deception easier to accept. The prophecy of 30 liars isn't just being fulfilled. It's being fulfilled in ways that make their global influence possible for the first time in history. Sign 3. Religious knowledge will be taken away. This prophecy is perhaps one of the most heartbreaking for believers to witness. The prophet said religious knowledge will be taken away from the earth. But here's what makes this prophecy subtle. It doesn't mean religious books will disappear. The Quran still exists in millions of copies. Islamic libraries are full of scholarly works. Religious schools operate worldwide. The prophecy refers to true understanding, deep, authentic knowledge that transforms hearts and guides actions. That kind of knowledge is disappearing rapidly. Let's look at the Muslim world today. There are over 1.8 billion Muslims on earth. Yet how many truly understand the Quran beyond memorized recitation? How many can explain the deeper meanings of Islamic teachings? For centuries, Muslims have moved away from studying primary sources directly. Instead, they rely on spiritual guides, cultural traditions, or simplified interpretations. The result? A massive disconnect from authentic Islamic knowledge. Walk into most mosques during Quran recitation. Beautiful voices fill the air with melodious Arabic. But ask the listeners what they just heard. Most cannot explain a single verse in their own language. They've reduced divine revelation to mere sound waves. This isn't limited to common people. Even many religious leaders lack deep knowledge. They repeat what they've heard from their teachers, who repeated what they heard from theirs. Like a game of telephone, the original message gets distorted over generations. Sectarianism has made things worse. Different groups interpret the same texts in contradictory ways. Each claims to have the true understanding. The result? Confusion and division instead of clarity and unity. Modern distractions accelerate this knowledge loss. People spend hours scrolling social media but minutes studying religious texts. Entertainment consumes their attention. Spiritual growth becomes a weekend activity at best. Even in religious education, the focus has shifted. Students memorize rules and rituals but miss the underlying wisdom. They learn what to do, but not why they're doing it. The spirit of the teachings gets lost in mechanical practice. Technology creates another problem: information overload. Thousands of religious opinions available instantly online. No way to distinguish authentic scholarship from personal opinions. Truth gets buried under an avalanche of conflicting views. The consequences are visible everywhere. Religious communities plagued by ignorance, extremism, and moral confusion. People calling themselves believers while living completely un-Islamic lives. Knowledge exists, but understanding has vanished. This isn't just about Islam. Other religious traditions face similar challenges. Ancient wisdom traditions struggling to maintain authenticity in modern contexts. Sacred knowledge becoming either overly simplified or completely inaccessible. The prophecy is being fulfilled in real time, not through book burning or persecution, but through spiritual apathy and intellectual laziness. Sign 4. Earthquakes will increase. When the prophet spoke about earthquakes increasing before the day of judgment, listeners in 7th century Arabia could hardly imagine the scale we'd witness today. Back then, earthquakes were local disasters affecting small communities. The idea of a single earthquake killing hundreds of thousands seemed impossible. Yet that's exactly what we've experienced in recent decades. Let's examine the data that make scientists and Islamic scholars pay attention. Between 2004 and 2014, 18 earthquakes with magnitudes of at least 8.0 were recorded worldwide. That represents a 265% increase compared to the average rate from the previous century. Now, some scientists argue that earthquakes aren't actually increasing in frequency. They claim our improved detection technology simply allows us to record more quakes than before. Seismic monitoring networks now cover the globe. We catch tremors that would have gone unnoticed centuries ago. But here's what can't be disputed. The destructive power and human impact of earthquakes has reached unprecedented levels. December the 26th, 2004. A 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra. It triggered a tsunami that traveled across the entire Indian Ocean. The waves reached heights of 100 feet in some areas. When the water receded, 228,000 people across 14 countries were dead. Entire coastal communities had been wiped off the map. 8 October 2005. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake hit northern Pakistan and Kashmir. Over 80,000 people died. Entire mountainous regions were cut off from the outside world. Villages vanished under landslides. 3 million people were left homeless as winter approached. May 12, 2008. China's Sichuan province experienced a 7.9 magnitude earthquake. The death toll reached 88,000. 5 million people lost their homes. Entire schools collapsed, burying thousands of children. The economic damage exceeded $150 billion. January 12, 2010. Haiti was struck by a 7.0 magnitude earthquake. The relatively moderate magnitude was deceiving. Because the earthquake hit near the capital city and buildings weren't constructed to withstand seismic activity, the devastation was catastrophic. 316,000 people died. The country's infrastructure was destroyed. Recovery took years. These aren't just statistics. Each number represents families destroyed, communities erased, and survivors traumatized for life. The scale of suffering from individual earthquakes now exceeds what entire regions experience throughout history. Modern urbanization makes earthquakes more deadly. Millions of people live in densely packed cities built on fault lines. Tokyo, Los Angeles, Istanbul, Tehran, all sitting on seismic time bombs. When the next big one hits these cities, the casualties could dwarf previous disasters. Climate change may be making things worse. Some scientists suggest that melting ice caps and changing weather patterns could influence tectonic activity. The Earth's crust responds to changing pressures in ways we don't fully understand. Whether earthquakes are actually increasing in frequency or just becoming more destructive, the prophecy's fulfillment is undeniable. The level of devastation from seismic activity has reached scales unimaginable when the prophecy was made. Sign 5. Time will pass quickly. This prophecy puzzles many people at first. How can time pass quickly? A day is still 24 hours. An hour is still 60 minutes. Time itself hasn't changed. But the prophecy isn't about physics. It's about human perception and experience. And, in that sense, it's one of the most accurately fulfilled predictions of our modern era. Think about your typical day. You wake up to multiple alarms on your phone, check messages before your feet hit the floor, rush through breakfast while scrolling news feeds, commute while listening to podcasts or making calls, work through lunch, rush home through traffic, grab fast food for dinner, collapse in front of screens until you fall asleep. Where did the day go? It feels like it just started, but suddenly it's over. This isn't just individual experience. Our entire society operates at unprecedented speed. Fast food because we don't have time to cook. Speed dating because we don't have time for traditional courtship. Express lanes, rapid transit, instant messaging, same-day delivery. Everything is designed for speed. Yet, paradoxically, we never have enough time. Our grandparents' generation had a completely different relationship with time. They woke with the sun, worked with their hands, sat on porches in the evening, had long conversations without distractions. Time moved at a human pace. Technology promised to save us time. Email instead of letters. Online shopping instead of going to stores. Digital banking instead of waiting in lines. Yet we feel more rushed than ever. Social media accelerates everything. News cycles change by the hour. Trending topics last for days instead of years. Attention spans shrink to seconds. Everything must be instant or it's irrelevant. The workplace has become relentless. Emails arrive 24/7. Conference calls span time zones. Deadlines overlap. The concept of after-work hours has disappeared for many people. Work bleeds into every moment. Even entertainment moves faster. Movies have quicker cuts. Songs have shorter intros. TV shows cram more action into each episode. Video games provide instant gratification. Our brains are being rewired for speed. Children today can't sit still for activities that previous generations enjoyed for hours. Reading books feels slow. Playing outside seems boring. They need constant stimulation and immediate rewards. The result is a collective feeling that time is racing by. Weeks blur into months. Years feel like they're accelerating. People frequently say, "I can't believe it is already December," or "this year flew by." But there's a deeper spiritual dimension. When life moves too fast, we lose connection with the present moment. We stop appreciating small blessings. We miss the signs of God's creation around us. We become spiritually unconscious. The prophecy about time passing quickly isn't just about busy schedules. It's about losing the contemplative, mindful way of living that keeps us connected to our Creator and our purpose. In our rush to save time, we've lost the very thing that makes time meaningful. Sign 6. Trials and afflictions will appear. The prophecy about widespread trials and afflictions covers multiple dimensions of human suffering that we see escalating in modern times. Let's start with physical afflictions. New diseases emerge regularly. HIV/AIDS appeared in the 1980s and killed millions before treatments were developed. SARS, MERS, Ebola, and Zika virus have created global health scares. Most recently, COVID-19 shut down the entire world for years. These aren't just random biological events. Many result from human behavior. Deforestation brings us into contact with animal viruses. Global travel spreads diseases instantly across continents. Antibiotic overuse creates drug-resistant superbugs. But physical diseases are just the beginning. Mental health afflictions have reached epidemic proportions. Depression affects over 300 million people worldwide. Anxiety disorders impact nearly 300 million more. Suicide rates have skyrocketed in developed countries. What makes modern mental afflictions unique is their scope and causes. Previous generations faced poverty, war, and natural disasters. Yet mental illness rates were lower. Today, people have material comfort but psychological suffering. Social media creates constant comparison. Everyone else's life looks perfect online. Your own struggles feel magnified. The fear of missing out becomes overwhelming. Self-worth gets tied to likes and followers. Economic afflictions create different kinds of trials. Massive inequality exists within individual countries and globally. Some people have more wealth than they can spend in multiple lifetimes. Others work multiple jobs but can't afford basic necessities. The traditional economic safety nets are disappearing. Pensions are rare. Healthcare costs bankrupt families. Education requires massive debt. Home ownership becomes impossible for many young people. Economic anxiety affects all social classes. Environmental afflictions multiply each year. Climate change brings stronger hurricanes, longer droughts, more intense wildfires. Air pollution kills millions annually. Plastic contamination reaches the deepest ocean trenches and highest mountain peaks. But perhaps the most significant affliction is spiritual emptiness. This one affects even people who seem successful by worldly standards. Modern society has systematically removed God from public life. Religion is treated as a private matter that shouldn't influence important decisions. Moral relativism claims that truth is subjective. Materialism suggests that physical pleasure is life's highest goal. The result is widespread existential crisis. People achieve their career goals but feel empty inside. They accumulate possessions but remain unsatisfied. They experience physical pleasures but lack spiritual fulfillment. This spiritual affliction manifests in various ways. Addiction rates soar as people seek escape from inner emptiness. Relationship breakdown increases as people expect others to provide meaning they should find in their relationship with God. Political extremism grows as people make ideologies into substitute religions. The prophecy mentioned trials and afflictions, not just individual problems. These are collective challenges that test entire societies. They force communities to choose between maintaining faith or abandoning it under pressure. Modern trials test faith in subtle ways. It's easy to believe in God during prosperity and health. It's harder when science claims to explain everything without divine intervention. When cultural pressure makes religious practice seem outdated. When following Islamic principles conflicts with professional advancement. These afflictions aren't punishment. They're tests. They separate sincere believers from casual ones. They force people to decide what they truly value, and they prepare faithful communities for even greater trials ahead. Sign 7. Killing will increase. The prophecy about increased killing takes on horrifying clarity when we examine modern violence patterns and methods. Traditional warfare had limitations. Armies fought with swords, spears, and arrows. Battles were contained to specific locations. Civilian casualties, while tragic, were relatively limited. The scale of killing was constrained by technology and geography. Modern warfare changed everything. World War I introduced machine guns, poison gas, and artillery that could kill hundreds instantly. World War II brought aerial bombing of cities, systematic genocide, and finally nuclear weapons that could annihilate entire populations in seconds. But the prophecy extends beyond traditional warfare. It encompasses all forms of killing, and here the patterns become deeply disturbing. Terrorism has redefined violence in our era. September 11th killed nearly 3,000 people in a single day using civilian aircraft as weapons. The London bombings, Madrid train attacks, Paris concert hall massacre, and countless others brought warfare to civilian populations who thought they were safe. What makes modern terrorism particularly chilling is its randomness. Previous violence usually had clear military or political targets. Today's attacks deliberately target innocent people. Shopping malls, schools, places of worship, concerts, marathons. Nowhere is considered off-limits. The methods have become increasingly creative and deadly. Truck attacks in Nice, France, and New York City. Pressure cooker bombs at the Boston Marathon. Chemical weapons in subway systems. Each attack inspires copycat incidents worldwide. Mass shootings have become tragically routine. Schools, workplaces, movie theaters, and religious gatherings regularly become crime scenes. The weapons are more powerful, the body counts higher, and the perpetrators often have unclear motives. There's another hadith that perfectly describes modern violence. The prophet said a time would come when the murderer wouldn't know why he killed, and the victim wouldn't know why he was killed. This describes so much contemporary violence. School shooters whose manifestos reveal mental illness rather than clear motivation. Terror attacks where the perpetrator's connection to the cause seems superficial. Random violence that leaves investigators and families searching for explanations that don't exist. Gang violence in cities creates war zones where children can't walk to school safely. Drug trafficking turns neighborhoods into battlefields. Honor killings destroy families over perceived slights. Domestic violence reaches lethal levels more frequently. The weapons available to civilians now rival military equipment. Semi-automatic rifles, high-capacity magazines, body armor, and explosive materials can be obtained legally or through black markets. A single individual can now inflict casualties that would have required an army in previous eras. Social media amplifies violence in disturbing ways. Attacks are live-streamed to global audiences. Manifestos spread instantly across platforms. Perpetrators gain notoriety that inspires imitators. Violence becomes entertainment for some viewers. Video games and movies normalize extreme violence from early ages. Children become desensitized to killing through constant exposure to graphic content. The line between virtual and real violence blurs for some individuals. But perhaps most troubling is how routine killing has become. Daily news reports of murders, terrorist attacks, and mass casualties create psychological numbness. Society adapts to violence levels that would have shocked previous generations. The prophecy isn't just about numbers. It's about the normalization of killing, when violence becomes expected rather than shocking, when people accept it as an unavoidable part of modern life. This normalization prepares society for even greater violence ahead. When the major signs intensify, communities already accustomed to killing will be less likely to resist or even recognize the escalation. Sign 8. Wealth will be abundant. This prophecy presents a fascinating paradox. It predicts wealth becoming so abundant that wealthy people will struggle to find anyone willing to accept their charity. At first glance, this seems impossible in our world of extreme inequality. Billions live in poverty while a small percentage control most global wealth. How could abundance become a problem? But look more carefully at specific regions, and the prophecy's precision becomes clear. Several European countries have effectively eliminated extreme poverty through comprehensive social welfare systems. Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Switzerland provide free healthcare, education, unemployment benefits, housing assistance, and old age pensions that guarantee basic living standards for all citizens. The Gulf states present even more dramatic examples. Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia use oil wealth to provide extensive benefits to their citizens. Free healthcare, education, subsidized housing, and guaranteed employment create societies where traditional charity becomes less relevant. In these wealthy nations, when someone offers to help pay for medical bills, education costs, or basic necessities, the typical response is, "I don't need it." Government programs already cover these expenses. Even China, despite its massive population, has made remarkable progress in poverty elimination. The government claims to have lifted 800 million people out of extreme poverty over recent decades through economic development and social programs. But the prophecy has deeper implications beyond government welfare systems. Technology companies create wealth at unprecedented scales. Amazon, Apple, Google, and Microsoft generate profits that exceed the GDP of most countries. Their founders accumulate wealth faster than they can possibly spend it. This creates the phenomenon mentioned in the prophecy. Billionaires struggle to give away their money effectively. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and others have pledged to donate most of their wealth, but find that charitable giving requires careful planning to avoid waste or unintended consequences. The Giving Pledge Initiative asks billionaires to commit to giving away the majority of their wealth. Yet, even with dozens of participants, the challenge remains. How do you give away tens of billions of dollars in ways that create lasting positive impact? Some wealthy individuals report frustration that their charitable offers get rejected. Recipients worry about strings attached, cultural differences, or simply don't want to feel indebted to strangers. The psychology of receiving charity becomes complex when survival isn't at stake. Cryptocurrency has created another dimension of rapid wealth creation. Bitcoin millionaires appeared overnight. People who bought digital assets for pennies suddenly possessed fortunes worth millions. Young individuals gained wealth without traditional business experience or charitable networks. The prophecy also reflects changing social structures. In traditional societies, wealthy individuals were easily identifiable community leaders. Their charity had clear social functions and grateful recipients. Modern wealth often exists anonymously through investments and digital assets. Contemporary wealthy individuals frequently report that their social circles consist of other wealthy people. Finding genuinely needy recipients requires deliberate effort. Professional charitable organizations serve as intermediaries, but direct personal charity becomes rare. This abundance creates spiritual challenges mentioned in Islamic teachings. When material needs are easily met, people may lose connection to their dependence on Allah. Gratitude decreases when blessings feel automatic. Charity becomes tax deduction rather than spiritual purification. The prophecy identifies a specific stage in human development. Not universal poverty, but localized abundance that changes the dynamics of giving and receiving. Sign 9. People will compete in building tall structures. This prophecy demonstrates the remarkable specificity of Islamic predictions about the future. When it was made 1400 years ago, the tallest human-made structures were a few stories high. The concept of buildings reaching hundreds of meters into the sky was unimaginable. Yet today, this prophecy is fulfilled in dramatic detail across the globe. The competition aspect is crucial. Nations, cities, and corporations now compete explicitly for the prestige of having the world's tallest building. It's become a symbol of power, progress, and technological achievement. Dubai's Burj Khalifa currently holds the record at 828 meters tall with 163 floors. But this record was specifically designed to be unbreakable for decades. The building could have been shorter and still served its practical purposes. The extra height exists purely for prestige and to fulfill the vision of Dubai's leadership. Saudi Arabia is constructing the Jeddah Tower, planned to exceed 1,000 meters in height. The project exists primarily to reclaim the world record and establish Saudi Arabia as a leader in architectural achievement. The building will have more space than any conceivable use requires. But the competition extends beyond individual buildings to entire skylines. Chinese cities have transformed from low-rise communities to forests of skyscrapers within single generations. Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou compete with each other and with international cities for the most impressive urban profiles. Malaysia's Petronas Twin Towers were specifically designed to surpass Chicago's Willis Tower as the world's tallest when they were completed. The architectural decisions prioritized height over other considerations. New York City's One World Trade Center was built to reach exactly 1776 feet, making a symbolic statement while competing for super-tall building status. The height was chosen for meaning rather than practical necessity. The prophecy mentions competition specifically, not just tall buildings. This competitive element is visible everywhere. Architectural firms market themselves based on height achievements. Construction companies boast about super-tall building experience. Cities use skylines in tourism marketing. Real estate developers deliberately plan buildings to exceed existing records, even when shorter structures would be more economical. The psychological and marketing value of height claims justifies massive additional costs. International conferences now focus on super-tall building construction. Awards ceremonies celebrate height achievements. Professional publications rank cities by skyline impressiveness. The competition has become institutionalized. What makes this prophecy particularly striking is how it captured human psychology. The desire to build higher than neighbors reflects pride, ambition, and the drive to demonstrate superiority. These motivations haven't changed, but modern technology finally makes extreme heights possible. The environmental and practical costs of super-tall buildings often exceed their benefits. They require massive energy for elevators, heating, cooling, and lighting. Construction uses enormous resources. Maintenance costs multiply with height. Yet cities continue building them because the symbolic value outweighs economic considerations. The tallest building becomes a landmark that defines the city's identity and attracts international attention. The prophecy also connects to spiritual themes in Islamic teaching. Excessive building was associated with pride and forgetting one's ultimate dependence on Allah. When communities focus more on impressing others than serving genuine needs, they lose spiritual perspective. Some Islamic scholars note that this sign appeared prominently in historically Muslim regions. The Islamic world now hosts some of the tallest buildings, suggesting a specific relevance to Muslim communities losing touch with traditional values of simplicity and humility. Sign 10. People will wish for death. This final sign among those already manifesting presents perhaps the most tragic reflection of modern spiritual crisis. The prophecy states that a person passing by a grave will say, "I wish I were in his place." This isn't about elderly people naturally contemplating mortality. It describes widespread longing for death among people who should be enjoying life. Mental health statistics reveal the devastating scope of this prophecy's fulfillment. Global depression rates have skyrocketed beyond anything recorded in human history. The World Health Organization identifies depression as the leading cause of disability worldwide. Over 300 million people suffer from depression, with numbers increasing annually. But raw statistics only tell part of the story. The nature of modern depression differs qualitatively from historical experiences of sadness or grief. Previous generations faced poverty, disease, war, and natural disasters. Yet suicide rates were generally lower. People found meaning through family, community, and faith even during tremendous hardship. Today's depression occurs amid material abundance that previous generations could never imagine. People have comfortable housing, abundant food, advanced medical care, and entertainment options their ancestors would consider miraculous. Yet they feel hopeless, Social media creates unprecedented psychological pressures. Constant comparison with carefully curated online personas makes people feel inadequate about their real lives. The fear of missing out becomes overwhelming. Self-worth gets tied to external validation through likes and comments. The United States exemplifies this trend. Suicide rates increased 28% between 1999 and 2010 among people aged 35 to 64. In 2018, the country recorded its highest ever number of suicides at over 48,000 deaths in a single year. These aren't people facing extreme poverty or persecution. Many are middle-class individuals with stable employment, healthcare access, and material security. Yet they find life unbearable. The demographic patterns reveal spiritual rather than material causes. Rural communities with lower incomes sometimes have lower suicide rates than wealthy suburbs. Immigrant communities facing significant hardships often maintain stronger mental health than established populations. Technology amplifies the problem in multiple ways. Constant connectivity eliminates quiet contemplation time. Video games and social media provide artificial stimulation that makes real life feel boring. Online communities can reinforce negative thinking patterns. The loss of traditional community structures removes natural support systems. Extended families live far apart. Religious participation declines. Neighborhood connections weaken. People face personal crises and isolation. Career and educational pressures create different forms of despair. Students face massive debt loads for degrees that may not lead to fulfilling careers. Workers experience job insecurity and constant pressure for productivity improvements. The promise that hard work leads to happiness proves false for many. Relationship breakdown contributes to widespread loneliness. Divorce rates remain high. Marriage rates decline. Birth rates fall below replacement levels. People have fewer deep, lasting connections with others. But the deepest cause may be existential emptiness. When society removes God from the picture, life loses ultimate meaning. Achievements feel hollow. Pleasures provide temporary satisfaction but no lasting fulfillment. The big questions about purpose remain unanswered. Pharmaceutical approaches treat symptoms but rarely address underlying spiritual causes. Antidepressant usage has increased dramatically, yet suicide rates continue rising. Chemical interventions can't resolve existential crises. The prophecies imagery is particularly poignant. Seeing a grave and wishing to be there represents complete despair about life's possibilities. It suggests that death appears more appealing than continued existence. This isn't limited to clinical depression. Many people express casual wishes for death during stress. I wish I could just disappear, or I don't want to be here anymore. The normalization of such statements reflects how common these feelings have become. Remaining major signs still to come. While we've examined 10 signs that may already be manifesting, Islamic teachings mention additional major signs that clearly haven't occurred yet. The appearance of the Dajjal, often called the Antichrist, represents perhaps the most significant future sign. This figure will possess unprecedented power to deceive humanity through apparent miracles and global influence. His emergence will test faith like nothing in human history. The return of Jesus, peace be upon him, will occur during the Dajjal's time. He will descend near Damascus, lead the faithful against deception, and restore true monotheistic worship. His second coming will unite sincere believers across different traditions. Gog and Magog, two massive tribes currently restrained behind a barrier, will eventually break free and spread corruption across the earth. Their emergence will bring chaos until divine intervention destroys them. The beast of the earth will emerge and speak to humanity, marking people based on their faith. This creature will distinguish believers from non-believers in ways that remove all ambiguity about spiritual positions. Finally, the sun will rise from the west instead of the east. This cosmic sign will occur on the morning of the Day of Judgment itself, serving as the final warning before the hour arrives. These future signs will be unmistakable when they occur. Unlike the subtle fulfillment of prophecies we've discussed, these events will be obvious to all humanity. We've journeyed through 10 major signs of the Day of Judgment, some clearly happening around us right now, others building momentum in ways previous generations never witnessed. Great wars between people of the same faith, false prophets gaining global followings, religious knowledge disappearing despite abundant information, devastating earthquakes reaching unprecedented scales, time feeling like it's racing by, trials and afflictions multiplying across all aspects of life, killing increasing in frequency and brutality, wealth becoming so abundant that charity gets rejected, competition in building impossibly tall structures, people wishing for death despite material comfort. The patterns are undeniable. Prophecies made 1400 years ago are manifesting with stunning accuracy in our modern world. But here's what's crucial to understand. These signs aren't meant to create panic or despair. They serve as wake-up calls, reminders that this world is temporary, encouragements to focus on what truly matters. Whether the Day of Judgment comes in our lifetime or generations from now, each of us faces our personal judgment when we die. The preparation remains the same. Strengthen your relationship with Allah. Live according to divine guidance. Help others along the path. These signs validate the truth of Islamic teachings. They demonstrate that Prophet Muhammad received genuine revelation from the Creator of the universe. They prove that Allah knows the future and warns humanity about what's coming. Most importantly, they remind us that no matter how dark things appear, Allah remains in control. The ultimate victory belongs to truth, justice, and those who submit to their Creator. The question isn't when these signs will be complete. The question is, are we ready for what comes next?